Hello, everybody. JD here. Welcome to the next episode of the Rational Trader Podcast. With me is Ivan Marchev. Ivan, it's been, boy, I don't know if we've recorded together in 2025. I know we did a couple recordings late last year, and I was thrilled when, I'm disappointed, obviously, whenever Louis can't join me, but it's nice to get a different voice. And for those that don't know, Ivan, he is really an expert in the global markets, and so his background, especially Eastern European background, can offer some interesting insights. And I know every time I've had you on, Ivan, it's been a great discussion. So welcome, and how have you been?
All right. Obviously today is an all-time high in the market, right?
The melt up
Uh,
continues.
well, I think it's extremely overextended in one direction, and that basically, if it keeps going, we're going to get a bigger correction. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It needs to zig and zag. It's not zigging.
But you know what? Alan Greenspan uttered irrational exuberance in 1996.
It's not that.
He
It's
was
not that.
4 years early.
And it's not that. Wow, it's when the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates at an all-time high, it tends to boost the stock market, but there's something else. I think the vast majority of institutional money managers completely missed the April bottom, completely.
Hmm.
And they're underperforming and they're chasing the market. And also, we have this very substantial problem with the S&P 500 where 40% of the index is in the top 10 stocks and 60% of the index is in the bottom 490. And
Right.
of the top 10, only two are on tech, JP Morgan and Berkshire Hathaway. Everything else is tech, tech, and only tech.
But isn't it true that the equal weighted S&P is doing well?
Nobody is looking at the equal weighted S&P. I speak to investors every day. When you tell them equal weighted S&P, they're like,
They
wow.
fall asleep on you, huh?
Yeah. So, so, and also, those eight companies are 70% of the QQQ or the NASDAQ 100. That's how big they are.
Right, right.
So we have this lopsided problem. So unless you want to outperform the S&P, you got to be chasing the Mag 7 or Mag 8 if you include Tesla, because that one moves in fits and starts, does nothing, goes down 50%. Now it's hot. So it's not like Amazon or Nvidia or any of the others. It's a very different type of stock. It moves in its own universe because of Musk, obviously. But unless you, if you want to outperform the S&P, that's what you have to chase, and they're chasing it right now. You see what happens with the Nasdaq 100 today, and people say,
Well,
"Oh, the Russell is going to do great" and all that. Yes, I think the Russell is going to do great, but the Russell is a stupid index. 40% of the companies in the Russell don't make any money,
right.
and the reason why we're waiting for the Russell to do great is for the Fed to lower interest rates. And I'm not so sure the Fed should be lowering interest rates so much, you know.
Well,
Uh,
GDP now is tracking at almost 3.5%. I guess it dipped to 3.3% earlier this week. We get another read at the end of next week, so it's going to be kind of a quiet period here.
yeah, so the Goldman economist, who's a very good economist, Jan Hatzius, told him tariffs will show up inflation, and Trump told the CEO of Goldman, "Oh, you got to get a new economist." I don't think so. Tariffs are showing up some in inflation. It's not going to be horrendous inflation, but it'll be a bump in inflation. And it's not a one-off situation because he's tariffs on, tariffs off, tariffs on, tariffs on. So these companies can't figure out what's going on.
Well,
So
one of the
prices are
reasons, Yvonne, I was really excited to get to talk to you today. Uh, you know, Louis and I tend to be in a little bit of an echo chamber. So I like to throw out different theories and especially to smart people like you in the industry. But I've had this theory, and Louis kind of poo-poos it. Um, but my theory on this melt up in general is that without inflation, we would not have a rising stock market. In other words, these gains and directly correlated to that are corporate profits that require prices going higher to
There is,
fuel profit growth.
when you have elevated inflation, you tend to have elevated profits. That's true. That is true.
And
Uh,
combine that with, these, I call them tree huggers, these institutional money managers that are hugging the index. If they're lagging, then they're going to go out chasing, no doubt about it. And they're chasing profits without really understanding that a lot of those profits. I mean, I went to the grocery store. I have a mother in Arizona that is going through that aging thing, and so I'm helping her, and I'm spending some time in Arizona, and I come back to Minnesota, and I run to the grocery store, and stupid example, but I pick up a little bag of shredded cheese, right? I wanted to make tacos because I had just been spending time in, the Southwest, and I love tacos. So I buy a little bag of cheese. I couldn't believe it, Ivan. I mean, that thing was empty, in 2 days. Whereas I used to be able to buy a bag of shredded cheese and it would last for 2 weeks.
yeah, well, shrinkflation.
Ex-
So
exactly, but people talk about that, and then it's
yeah,
like,
go look at the size of the can. I don't drink Folgers because I don't like the coffee. But go look at the size of the coffee cans, how they have shrunk, particularly the bigger ones. Folgers is like they're tiny,
wasn't
and
there one chock full of nuts or something like that?
those shrunk too. They have a bigger can and they have a normal can, but the
There,
normal
there's a
can
great
shrunk.
there's a movie with Jack Nicholson, The Bucket List, where they both main characters end up in ashes,
Yeah,
buried
I know
in
the
a,
film.
in a
Yeah,
in
I
a
know, I
chock full
know.
of nuts, and you can see that thing is huge and red.
Well,
It's that,
they're two large cans. There's an oversized one and a normal big one.
yeah,
But the normal big one is not as big as it used to be before. The Folgers is the same way, and I'm sure the others have done it too.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think you and I would both agree that we know how this story ends.
Listen, um, I think the economy is fine. I think what Trump is doing needs to be done with the tariffs and rebalancing the trade situation. I don't think it can be rebalanced in 3 months or 6 months. If something takes 30 years to create an imbalance, it's going to be a while before it gets rebalanced. But clearly, he wants to set it in the right direction. And if he does manage to do that, he's going to be remembered as a good president. I know people hate Trump because he's an abrasive individual. But if
That's
we
an
kind of,
understatement.
yeah, if you kind of remove his overdone personality from the whole thing and just focus on the policy is actually very good. So yeah, so let's see what happens with these tariffs and all these court challenges. And he's getting a little arrogant. Fire this news executive, fire the Fed governor because she said primary residence or her mortgage documents. Well, there's members of his cabinet that did the same thing. Why doesn't he fire them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
This is like this is pushing way too hard to get rid of a Fed governor.
that's a guy that's very, very well versed in the litigation process.
That is pushing too hard to get rid of a Fed governor. I'm not a big fan of Lisa Cook. I'm just saying, didn't Trump get a major fine because he was overstating the value of his real estate to get loans?
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
in court
yeah,
3 years
yeah.
ago. So
No, but this isn't about right or wrong. This is, I mean, he is blazing a trail of
I
vindictiveness.
understand he's blazing a trail, but you do realize that if the Federal Reserve lowers interest rate way too much right now, let's
Yeah.
say he manages to do that, which I don't think he will do, but let's say he manages to do that, get people in there to lower interest rates a lot.
Yes.
You know what happens to 30-year bonds
Oh yeah.
and 10-year treasuries?
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at a 6% 10-year treasury and a 6.5% 30-year bond. And then it's going to crash, the housing market more than it's already crashed. So it's simply because if you run inflationary policies, you blow out the bond market. It's very simple.
Well, and you
So
saw how the bond market reacted to just this 25 basis
yeah,
point cut. I
yeah,
mean,
didn't react well on the 25
they
basis
try to
point.
pretend that it wasn't the bond
Yeah,
vigilantes and everything's
yeah.
calm and yeah, bull
Well,
crap.
the bond market didn't react well the first time he cut by 50.
Right.
So bond market's trying to tell you something.
Oh yeah.
And the Japanese have been behind inflation for a very long period of time because they know their financial system is going to get a hard time lifting off those low interest rates. And their 30-year bonds keep ticking higher. Went into the 3%. They've never traded at 3% before. And just because the inflation in Japan is a really big problem. These are rice eating people. When their rice goes up 69% in a year, they panic. That's all they eat.
Yeah, yeah.
Rice is up 69% in Japan year over year. I
Wow.
understand there's issues with weather and the inefficient distribution system and all this. There's also issues with inflation and the way they've run the economy. So I don't know. And then the Bank of Japan yesterday said that they'll sell some of their equity holdings because you know how they were buying all these ETFs on the Nikkei on the broad Japanese market to support the market.
Hmm.
Market was at an all-time high yesterday. They come up and they say we'll keep interest rates at 0.5, but we'll sell some of the stocks, and all of a sudden the Nikkei drops 1,300 points.
Mm.
A lot of points. So the Nikkei just did a climactic top. It traded up to a new high, and then it has something which the Japanese call a bearish engulfing pattern. Made a higher high on the day where it reversed, and a much lower low, and where it closed, which is, I guess, today in Japan because they're ahead of us, right? So
Yeah.
Nikkei has a massive reversal pattern, and the range of the day is like 13 or 1400 points. I think the Nikkei goes down from here probably 5%. Because Japanese, the ultimate momentum traders. You feed them this kind of a reversal, they're gonna be all over that index like dogs on a piece of red meat.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, so they chase it way too much to the upside, and then they short it like the world is ending. So
That
I think
that's that's interesting in Japan, Ivan. But the last time you and I spoke, I remember there was a lot going on in Europe, and specifically, you spent a lot of time focused on Germany. What has been happening in Germany over the last 6 months?
Germany went from having an incompetent government to more competent government because these social democrat people. I mean, they botched the decarbonization of the German economy completely. Obviously, there was a big influx of refugees that gave a big rise to this right wing party called Alternative for Germany (AFD). Some people call them neo Nazis. They're not neo Nazis, but they don't like immigrants, of which Germany has a lot because of all these refugees and open door policies. So now this party is becoming the number two parties in certain states in Germany, in like the local legislatures,
Hmm.
because the Germans are fed up with, the Germans want an organized country, want everything to run like a
How,
German
how
car.
have how have Germans stopped? I think the reason I'm interested is Germany. You had some nice charts on their stock market.
Germany did phenomenally well in the first 2 months of the year.
Yes,
And everybody was peddling this baloney how the American exceptionalism has ended.
right.
American exceptionalism hasn't ended. To be honest with you, I have a sneaking suspicion that the Trump administration tariff plans that came out on April 2nd somehow were leaked onto Wall Street. Because there was such relentless selling in the first quarter
Hmm.
and volatility, it was like a major reallocation or reducing of positions in US stocks. We
Right.
had days in that 10% correction before the tariffs, which became 20% situation after the tariffs. We had days where the market was going down on good news. And everybody was saying, oh, there's a major reallocation trade. They're buying Europe and emerging markets and they're selling the United States. And if I would say these people, if they want to do that, they're absolutely stupid because the reason why the United States has been outperforming so much is because Europe has zero high-tech sector. Okay, it's not zero. They have something. Okay. They have a great company that makes semiconductor equipment in the Netherlands and some other stuff. But in general, they're so far behind in high tech, it is surreal. They missed the information age. And because of that, their stock markets are perennially underperforming, other than for the first 2 months of the year where I think the tariff plans leaked. Right now, their stock markets are flat and we are flying higher. What happened to the American exceptionalism? All of a sudden, there was no American exceptionalism in the first 2 months of the year, and everybody woke up in May and decided that there is American exceptionalism. I mean, I don't buy this. I think the tariffs leaked. I think people relocated out of the U.S., and I think when they realized that the tariffs are only a negotiating tactic, everybody piled back in. And
Well,
right now,
the biggest victim of the shenanigans, I would argue, is Mr. Too Late himself, Jay Powell, who
he's done, man. He's going to be gone next year.
I know, but I just find it interesting, Yvonne, that he was so wrapped up in the 300% tariffs that it paralyzed him
I
to the
gotta tell
point
you,
where he couldn't run the central bank.
if we start seeing inflation numbers in the mid threes by the end of the year or January and February, Powell is not going to look bad because PIMCO thinks inflation is going higher, not only because of tariffs. They have some sort of modeling that they do internally. So all these forecasts that you see for inflate, they think inflation is accelerating.
Well, again, what I've anecdotally in my story about shredded cheese, Yvonne, one interpretation of that is that there is an acceptance going on of the inflation that's there, and therefore continued and rising expectations for the future of inflation. And that may be what PIMCO is picking up on.
I don't know, but I'm just telling you that Trump needs to leave the Federal Reserve alone and focus on trade policy and domestic policy. We got enough problems.
Oh,
We got
yeah.
problems with trade. We got problems with the whole medical insurance system. We got there's a bull market in problems in Washington. He doesn't need the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates way too much so he can blow up the bond market. That's a problem you don't need.
Yeah, I don't even know why I mean, I,
He
I ask,
thinks
I ask
he
Louis this
thinks
all the time.
he thinks if the Federal Reserve lowers the Fed funds rate, Treasury yields are going to go down. And I'm
Well, then he's
saying that if the
ignorant.
Federal Reserve, yeah, if the Federal Reserve lowers the Fed fund rates, I'm saying too much. I'm saying Treasury yields are going to go up.
Yes,
And because
yes,
Scott
yes.
Bessent understands this very well,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Scott Bessent was actually, lecturing the central bank governor of the Bank of Japan that they're behind the curve on inflation. Well, ta-da, we know that. because they had such a big problem with deflation. They'd rather have some inflation than deflation. You know what I mean? So, um, and
Well,
it's going to be.
it's a fire he doesn't really need to be fooling around with.
He doesn't need that. He's got enough.
Speaking of fires, I am obviously very curious because we've talked about it for most of the time we've been together on these podcasts when we get the opportunity, and that is uh, Ukraine. And, when he gets in office, the war will be over on day one. And that obviously has not happened.
I don't think you can move Putin out of those 4 provinces. They've already dug all the trenches. They put on the tank traps. They've laid down all the mines. This is going to be a DMZ like North Korea. Putin is not going to leave. It's very simple. Okay.
So if that's the case, I mean, I don't think Zelensky is asking him to leave at this point.
No, I think Zelensky wants him to leave, but Putin's not going to leave. So what is the point of keep on killing people to have a stalemate? And on top of everything, the Russians can overrun them if they want to. But they have made the calculation that they don't want to overrun them. They just want to stop at those 4 provinces. If they could have killed Zelensky years ago if they wanted to, with one of those missiles that nobody can stop. They shot it, and everybody was quiet there uncomfortably for 2 days. They have a missile that can be intercepted. Hypersonic with multiple warheads.
Right.
Carries conventional, carries nuclear. It doesn't need to carry nuclear. They can level the presidential palace in Kiev tomorrow if they wanted to.
Sure.
But Putin told them, don't do that. They asked him multiple times, let's level it. And he said no. So he wants a legitimate win of this military situation. Illegal war. I don't understand the term of a legal war. Which war is legal? Or the invasion of Iraq is legal? How legal is the invasion of Iraq?
Right.
There's no weapons of mass destruction. What's legal about it?
I guess what I'm, at this point, what is the end game here? And
the end game is he's going to force the Ukrainians to sign the same document that they had signed tentatively, which said that they would not join NATO and they would reduce the size of their military. And the Russians said, we will withdraw our forces to our pre-invasion checkpoints. There was a peace summit in Istanbul in 2022. The Russians have this document. And when because their document wasn't ratified by their parliament and it wasn't signed by the president, it was just a negotiating delegation. So it was a tentative agreement. And he wanted to sign it. And then this idiot by the name of Boris Johnson, who used to be the prime minister of the UK,
right?
He had a big problem politically at home. He was not doing well. He was about to go. So he traveled by train to Kiev and convinced Zelensky not to sign this thing. So if Zelensky had signed this, there wouldn't be a war. So Boris Johnson is the crux of all evil. Oh, we'll support you. Oh, it's going to be fine. You're going to win. How is he going to win? He is outnumbered 5-1.
Right.
I mean, they're doing a brilliant job defending themselves. But what is the point of pounding them with rockets and killing all these people in the meantime? He cannot win.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Putin is a nice guy. You have a better armed, larger military force who doesn't care about casualties. That's the number one thing.
And has Zelensky relented on that? Has he indicated a willingness to sign?
No, he can't sign because he's in a box. Because if he had signed this, all these people wouldn't die, of which there are hundreds of thousands.
Right.
Whether they're dead or injured or whatever, they say 1 million people. I don't know how many people are dead. The Russians probably lost.
Yeah.
The Russians probably lost more people because the number one Russian standard operating procedures keep throwing people into the fire. That's what they did in World War II.
Oh,
Did you know
sure.
that Russians lost double the number of troops compared to Germany?
Oh, yeah.
World War
Oh, yeah.
II.
Stalingrad is epic.
But it's not only, there's also other battles similar to Stalingrad.
Hmm.
They just keep throwing people in there and keep throwing people because they got a lot of people, and the Ukrainians cannot do that.
Sure.
You can keep.
Let's bring it back to the U.S., Yvonne. I think we've been talking a little bit about, and you mentioned it at the beginning. This market just keeps going like this, and there's
Yeah,
no
no,
real.
this is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
If you draw
What
this line
are
and
you
extract
looking for a
it,
trigger? Yeah, I mean, what's the trigger, and are we anywhere closer to seeing it?
I think the trigger is maybe today. Typically, quad witching is when futures and options expire on the same
Yes.
day.
Yes.
Used to be monthly options and monthly futures. Now we have daily options and weekly options and whatever. But this is the monthly options and the monthly futures. The September futures expired at the open. If you did pay attention, what happens in the last half an hour before they expire, 9 to 9:30, you will notice that there's a spike in S&P September futures, all futures, and there's a big spike in Nasdaq futures. And if you look at the Nasdaq futures, you will see that they expired an all-time high. Typically, that's a climax that produces some type of a sell-off. I don't know why the market ran it into the close. I thought the fact that we had this spike at the open was good enough to have some sort of a relief sell-off.
Well, we
But
had in the morning, we did have
no, we did have
the
in the
S&P
morning.
briefly went back to the
We did
flat
have
line.
it. I think you'll know more on Monday or Tuesday. You'll see the real reaction because this climactic spike upwards into a quad witching expiration for both futures and options looks like a buying climax to me. It looks like a
Interesting.
buying climax.
Interesting.
And
Let me point out something interesting to me today.
I've seen it before that on a quad witching expiration we make intermediate term tops more than once.
Okay,
More than
that. Say that again, Yvonne, because I want to make sure the
Because when the
audience.
futures expire and there's this buying climax,
Yes.
right? Because they jam prices, up, 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 up. I mean, we're up over 300 points since the first trading day of September from the bottom on the S&P.
Yeah.
When the futures expire, because they've put all this money to get them there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they need to book profits because right now there's lots of short-term gains on the tape that haven't been booked. You need a trigger, people start booking profits, and here's your correction. We can
Yeah.
very easily sell off. The biggest correction so far since we started rallying in earnest in late April is about 3.5%. It's over 3%. I don't know the exact number, but it's not 4.
The market that helps me the most this year with understanding the macro has been, and I plug my nose because I can't stand it, is the crypto and Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was down hard today.
Yeah. Bitcoin's also been a leading indicator for high beta assets. I think
Yep.
we are ripe for a sell-off, and I wouldn't be surprised if today was the high because it's a buying climax. Now, I'm surprised that they bought it so hard into the close. If they start selling it from the open, I wouldn't be surprised on Monday. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have a buying climax that's related to the quad witching expiration, and I think this ramp in the last hour has to do with that expiration because they're
Yes.
moving the strikes. If you notice, there's something weird going on in the last hour because now we have these daily and weekly options and daily.
Yeah.
And the last hour has become this crapshoot. The market can be trending nicely all day, and all of a sudden it starts flipping like a fish out of water in the last 60 minutes. And that has to do with the fact that they're moving on options prices away from the strikes. This is all computers.
Oh yeah, this is
This is
the
this is
citadels of the world.
Citadels, Goldmans, all of them.
Yes.
And then you get the options algos, and then you get the futures algos, and then they start talking to each other. Futures algo starts flipping the market. Options algo, because professionally they all short options out of the money. But
Yep.
if you're moving them away from the strike, they get some sort of insignificant value in the last hour until they go to zero, right? If they're out of the money. So if it's flipping like that, you get volatility value in those options. So even if you're shorting options at 5 or 10 cents, if they go to zero, that's pure profit. You see what I'm saying?
Are you a crypto guy or no?
No, I don't care about Bitcoin. I understand it's gone up a lot. I understand it's correlated to risk assets. Went down a lot during the Fed tightening. I don't think the world is going to solve its problems because of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Bitcoin, this blind faith in Bitcoin annoys me quite a bit.
You're not alone.
No. So the reason why you know an asset is a bubble is, can it produce the necessary cash flow in order to justify its price? And the answer with Bitcoin is no. I realize it can make the financial system more efficient, right? Blockchain technology.
Yes.
You're fully aware that you can use blockchain technology without Bitcoin.
Oh yeah.
You can use it with a stable coin. So
Yes.
Bitcoin in and of itself has become this digital asset, which is a leap of faith for me that I cannot make. You
Yeah.
know, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Only the penitent man shall pass, right? Leap of
Uh-huh.
faith. And
Yeah,
then he steps on the actual passage between in the canyon. It's in
that's
the
right.
last scene. So I'm not sure I can make this Indiana Jones move. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
Raise my
completely understand.
lift my foot and try to step into the abyss. I don't think so. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not an Indiana Jones kind of guy when it comes to.
What about breadth of the market? Pretty narrow.
It's
Uh,
narrow, but it's gotten better because the broad market's doing better. They are doing rotations. They've been
yeah.
doing rotations all month. Nasdaq goes from underperforming to one day to outperforming the other. When you have these positive for interest rates, not today. News, the Russell starts to outperform because the Russell really wants lower rates. Russell's outperforming, but Russell's a stupid index. If you look at when it was outperforming over the past year, it outperformed last year in July, it
Mhm.
collapsed in August, it outperformed last year in November, collapsed in December, the outperformance, and it's outperforming now. I don't know if it's going to collapse. I think the Russell is due to have a good year, but it's not an earnings driven index. The big money, revenue and earnings, love them or hate them, came from these tech stocks because it's not like the year 2000. They make lots of money.
Yes.
So that's why the US market's outperforming. And that's why Nvidia is bigger than the whole stock market in the UK. And when you look at the German DAX, it's a disaster of epic proportions. Yes, they have great industrial companies and all that, but it's so far behind in tech, it is surreal. Germans used to be behind in tech 25 years ago. They've gotten more behind.
Yeah.
And I like Germans. I like German cars. I like German beer. I like the industrious people. It's a well-run country. But and I like most European countries, particularly in the south, because they have great food and they have a very laid-back lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it's not like
You're a
Germany.
fan of Ibiza.
I'm a fan of the whole Mediterranean. Doesn't matter whether it's Europe or Asia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Yvonne, I just looked at the clock. You and I could go on for hours, I think, but this was a good catch up, long overdue, and greatly appreciated. I'm gonna cut us off here. Any final thoughts for folks before we leave?
So I do think we're overdue for a correction. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if we keep going without a correction. I think it's going to end up being a bigger correction when it comes. Anything between 5 and 10% is a normal correction, unless the S&P starts chopping below 6,400. I don't think we're in a correction. That's my magic level. But there's a
Okay.
reason. Okay. So if you see the market trending and staying below 6,400, we're in the middle of a correction. That's my take. And I think it can go as much as 10%. There is no reason for the correction to go more than 10%. Sometimes they overshoot for crazy reasons. Federal Reserve does this, Trump does that. Some kind of crazy war starts in the price of oil, things that we don't know ahead of time.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we don't have anything crazy, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 10% correction. And to be honest with you, I think we're better off with a 10% correction than keep going like this.
Well, in the trading that I do, I would love to see some selling because there are some great companies I want to
I
trade.
think, I think we saw a buying climax today. You will know if that is the case either Monday or Tuesday. The latest Wednesday, but I think Monday or Tuesday.
Well, Yvonne, thank you for that. You always have a good take, and we'll be watching it closely next week. This is JD for the Rational Trader Podcast. Yvonne,
And
thank you for joining us.
I think the S&P probably is going to make the 7,000 by the end of the year.
There you go.
By the end of the year,
Leave it on. We'll get we need a correction, but we end on a positive note.
not by the end of October, probably by the end of the year.
All right. Well, thank you, Yvonne, again. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.